Gravel bites into my palms as I push myself up from the dirt road, the echo of screeching tires still hanging in the night air. My husband's laughter fades with his taillights, leaving me alone in a darkness so complete it feels like drowning. I'm Autumn, and 10 minutes ago I thought I was going on a romantic drive with my husband. The taste of blood mingles with dirt in my mouth. My designer dress, the one Marcus insisted I wear tonight, is torn at the shoulder, probably ruined. He'll be furious about that. The thought makes me laugh, a harsh sound that bounces off the trees surrounding this godforsaken stretch of road. "You're becoming a liability," he'd said, so casually you'd think he was commenting on the weather. Then the car door flew open and his hands were on me, and suddenly I was tumbling onto gravel and shadows. My phone is still in his car. Of course it is. Marcus always thinks of everything. I start walking, each step sending sharp pains through my scraped knees. The moon offers just enough light to keep me from stumbling into the ditch. Every car that passes makes my heart leap, then sink. None of them slow down. I don't blame them. Who stops for a disheveled woman on a dark road at midnight? "You've gotten too curious lately," he'd said over dinner, watching me with those calculating eyes I used to find so captivating. Always asking about the business, about Mother's involvement. It's becoming problematic. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there. Hushed conversations with his mother Helen, the missing financial documents, the way they'd exchange glances whenever I asked about the family business. But love makes you stupid. Or maybe I just wanted to be stupid. To believe the fairy tale of the charming businessman who swept me off my feet. A car approaches from behind, slowing as it nears. I tense, ready to run, but then I hear a familiar voice. "Autumn? Oh my God, what happened?" Sophie, my best friend. The one person Marcus couldn't manipulate me into abandoning. "He knows," I say as I climb into her car, "about the documents I found." Sophie's hands tighten on the steering wheel. "That son of a bitch. I told you he was dangerous." I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just played along long enough to gather evidence. Evidence of what? What did you find? I close my eyes, seeing again the numbers that didn't add up, the shell companies, Helen's signature on documents that shouldn't exist. Enough to destroy them both, if I can prove it. Sophie's quiet for a long moment. "You know this means war, right? Helen will never let you threaten their precious family empire." A strange calm settles over me, replacing the shock and fear. Good, because I'm done playing the perfect Carter wife. "What are you going to do?" I watch the familiar streets of our town slide past, thinking of all the times I smiled and nodded at charity galas while Marcus and Helen built their reputation on lies and other people's money. Thinking of how they slowly stripped away my independence, my career, my dignity. "I'm going to take everything from them," I say, surprised by the ice in my voice. Starting with their precious reputation. Sophie glances at me and I see a flash of concern in her eyes. "Autumn, revenge won't fix what they did to you." "No," I agree, touching the bruises forming on my arm. "But it's a start." As we pull up to Sophie's house, my phone starts ringing from Marcus's car across town. I imagine him realizing his mistake, scrambling to damage control. Let him worry. Let him wonder. The game has changed, and this time I'm writing the rules. 3 years ago, I sat across from Helen Carter at her mahogany dining table, watching her slice into a perfectly cooked steak while she explained why I needed to quit my job. "Marketing is such a demanding career," she'd said, dabbing her lips with a cloth napkin. "Marcus needs a wife who can support his ambitions, dear, not someone distracted by her own." I remember how my wine glass trembled in my hand that night. How Marcus squeezed my knee under the table, his fingers digging in just hard enough to warn me. "Stay quiet. Play nice. Keep the peace." Now I'm back at that same table, watching Sophie scroll through my bank statements on her tablet. The numbers tell a story Helen never wanted me to see. "They've been siphoning money from your accounts for months," Sophie says, her voice tight with anger. "Small amounts at first, then larger transfers after you gave Marcus power of attorney." I trace the wood grain of the table with my fingertip. He said it was for investment opportunities, that we needed to pool our resources for the family's future. The family's future? Sophie scoffs. More like funding Helen's shopping addiction and Marcus's mistress. The front door opens, and Helen's voice carries from the foyer. Autumn, are you home, dear? I shoot Sophie a warning look. She quickly closes the tablet and slides it into her bag. Helen appears in the doorway, designer shopping bags hanging from her arms. Her smile freezes when she sees Sophie. Oh, I didn't realize we had company. Just catching up with an old friend, I say, standing to help with her bags. My hands shake slightly, but I force them steady. How lovely. Helen's tone suggests it's anything but. Though I do wish you'd mentioned having guests. I would have brought something suitable for lunch. No need, Sophie says, rising. I was just leaving. She hugs me, whispering, call me later, before heading out. Helen watches her go, then turns to me with that practiced, concerned mother expression. Darling, I worry about you spending time with Sophie. She's rather bitter since her divorce. Not the best influence. She's my friend. Friends can be dangerous when they're envious of what you have. Helen begins unpacking her shopping bags, revealing expensive silk blouses. Speaking of which, Marcus mentioned you've been asking questions about the business again. My heart races, but I keep my voice steady. Just trying to understand our investments better. Oh, sweetheart. Helen laughs softly. You don't need to worry your pretty head about all that. Marcus and I have everything under control. She pulls out a cream-colored blouse, holding it up. I bought this for you. Isn't it divine? Perfect for the charity gala next week. I take the blouse, feeling the silk between my fingers. Another pretty cage, another distraction. Thank you, I say, the words tasting like ash. It's beautiful. Try it on, Helen insists, her eyes sharp despite her smile. I want to make sure it fits properly. I head to the powder room, closing the door behind me. In the mirror, I see the bruises from last night starting to purple along my shoulder. The silk will cover them perfectly. Of course it will. Helen always thinks of everything. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. Mother says Sophie was there. We talked about this. Another buzz. Don't make me handle this like last night. I stare at the messages, remembering the cold calculation in his voice before he pushed me from the car. The way Helen will pretend not to notice my injuries at dinner tonight, just like she always does. The silk blouse feels like a noose around my neck. My phone buzzes again. Sophie this time. Documents are copied. Ready when you are. I look in the mirror one last time, straightening my shoulders. Helen's voice calls from the dining room, asking if everything fits all right. Perfect. I call back, my voice honey-sweet. It fits perfectly. Let them think they've won. Let them believe their pretty silk chains still hold me. Soon they'll learn what happens when you cage something too long, when you push someone past their breaking point. Soon they'll learn that some wounds don't heal. They harden into armor. The safe clicks open with Marcus's birthday. He always was predictably narcissistic. Inside, beneath insurance papers and property deeds, I find a manila envelope that makes my fingers go numb. Withdrawal slips, bank statements, forged signatures, my signatures. The numbers swim before my eyes as I flip through page after page. Not just my savings anymore, but my inheritance from Dad. Everything I'd kept separate. Everything I'd tried to protect. All of it funneled into accounts I've never seen. My hands shake as I take photos with my phone. The house feels too quiet, too exposed. Marcus could come home any minute. Helen could drop by unannounced, like she always does. A car door slams outside. I shove everything back into the safe, heart pounding as I spin the dial. Footsteps on the porch, keys jingling. Marcus finds me in the kitchen, calmly stirring coffee like I haven't just discovered how thoroughly he's destroyed me. You're home early, I say, proud of how steady my voice sounds. He loosens his tie, watching me with those calculating eyes. Board meeting ended sooner than expected. He comes closer, kisses my cheek. Have you been crying? Allergies. His hand catches my wrist, thumb pressing into my pulse point. You know you can tell me anything, right? We're partners. I meet his gaze, thinking of all the documents I just photographed. Of course we are. Good. His grip tightens slightly. Because Mother mentioned seeing Sophie's car here again yesterday? She dropped off some old photos from college. The lie comes easily now. Nothing important. Autumn. He says my name like he's scolding a child. After what happened the other night, I thought we had an understanding about Sophie. I pull away, moving to the sink. I understand perfectly. You made that very clear on that dirt road. That was unfortunate. He sighs, following me. But you forced my hand. All these questions about the business, meeting with old colleagues. It had to stop. And stealing my inheritance? Was that unfortunate too? The words escape before I can stop them. Marcus goes very still. What did you say? I turn to face him, terror and rage warring in my chest. I saw the papers, Marcus. The transfers. The forged signatures. Everything. His expression doesn't change, but something dark flickers in his eyes. You went through my safe? Your safe? I laugh, the sound brittle. Half of what's in there was mine. Before you and your mother decided to, his hand slams against the counter beside me. I flinch, but keep talking. How long have you been planning this? Was it your idea, or Helen's? You don't understand business, he says softly, dangerously. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. The greater good? My voice rises. You stole everything I had. I protected it. He moves closer, trapping me against the sink. You think you could manage that money better than me? Than Mother? We built an empire while you were playing at marketing campaigns. Playing? The word tastes like poison. I was vice president of... You were nothing, he snaps. And you'd still be nothing without us. Without me. The truth of it hits me then. Not just the theft, but the years of subtle degradation. The careful, calculated destruction of everything I was. You're right, I whisper. I was nothing, but that's changing. His hand catches my jaw, fingers digging in. Is that a threat? No, darling. I smile, channeling Helen's sweetest tone. Just a fact. The front door opens and Helen's voice rings out. Marcus, your father's lawyer is here about the trust fund transfers. Marcus releases me, straightening his tie. Not a word. He warns, then calls out, Coming, Mother? I wait until his footsteps fade, then pull out my phone. My hands shake as I text Sophie. It's worse than we thought. Much worse. Her reply comes instantly. Oliver Thompson agreed to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I touch my jaw where Marcus's fingers left their mark, thinking of all the documents now saved on my phone. Of all the years I spent being nothing. I'll be there. I text back. Time to become something they never saw coming. Oliver Thompson's office feels too bright, too exposed. The wall of windows behind his desk leaves nowhere to hide, and my hands won't stop shaking as I spread the documents across his desk. These transfers, he says, tapping one of the papers, they're all technically legal. Marcus made sure of that. But the signatures could be explained away. Power of attorney is messy territory. Oliver leans back, studying me with unexpected intensity. The real question is, why come to me? Before I can answer, my vision blurs. The room tilts sideways. Autumn? Sophie's voice seems far away. When was the last time you ate? I try to remember, but the days have blurred together. The constant vigilance, the pretending, the fear, it's all catching up at once. Oliver's hand appears with a glass of water. Drink this. Slowly. The water helps, but my hands still tremble. I'm fine. No, Sophie says firmly. You're not. And that's exactly why we're here. Oliver stands, pacing behind his desk. Marcus Carter and I have history. Bad history. He destroyed my first company through similar tactics. Legal theft wrapped in pretty paperwork. Then help me, I say. You know how they operate. It's not that simple. He stops pacing, faces me directly. The Carters don't just destroy businesses, they destroy people. Helen's specialty is making problems disappear. A chill runs through me. What kind of problems? Their last daughter-in-law, for instance. Marcus's first wife. Oliver's voice goes flat. Official record says she had a breakdown, moved abroad. Unofficial story? Nobody knows. Sophie grabs my arm. You never told me Marcus was married before. Because I didn't know. The room starts spinning again. All those subtle warnings from Helen about family loyalty, about keeping secrets. All those times Marcus mentioned how unstable some women become in high-pressure marriages. She tried to expose them too. Oliver says quietly. Came to me for help, just like you're doing now. I was too afraid to get involved. 2 weeks later, she was gone. My phone buzzes. A text from Marcus. Where are you? Mother's worried. Another buzz. Come home now. We need to discuss your medication. What medication? Sophie asks, reading over my shoulder. I'm not on any. The realization hits like a physical blow. The coffee Marcus insists on making every morning. The dizzy spells. The gaps in my memory. Oliver takes my phone, reads the messages. They're setting up your breakdown narrative, making sure there's a paper trail of instability. Like his first wife, I whisper. You can't go back there, Sophie says. But Oliver shakes his head. She has to. If she runs now, they'll use it against her. Make it part of their story. So what, she just plays along while they poison her? No. Oliver pulls out a business card, writes something on the back. She documents everything, builds her case. And most importantly, he hands me the card. She lets me help this time. I won't make the same mistake twice. My phone buzzes again. Helen. Darling, we're so worried. Marcus says you've been confused lately. I'm calling Dr. Reynolds. The pieces click together, the long game they've been playing. How long have they been laying this groundwork? How many coffee cups, how many vitamins prescribed by their hand-picked doctors? I need to throw up, I announce, and barely make it to Oliver's private bathroom. Sophie holds my hair back while I empty my stomach. When I'm done, she helps me to my feet, and I catch my reflection in the mirror. Pale, shaking, mascara smeared. I already look the part they're creating for me. I can't let them win, I tell my reflection. I won't disappear. Oliver appears in the doorway. Then let's make sure you're the one writing the ending to this story. I straighten my spine, wipe my face clean. Another text buzzes. Marcus again, his concern growing more demanding by the minute. Okay, I say. Tell me what to do. Because this time, the breakdown they're orchestrating won't go according to their script. This time, when everything falls apart, they'll be the ones who never see it coming. The tiny recording device feels like a bomb in my palm as I slide it into my bra. Oliver's words echo in my head. Get them talking. Let them reveal themselves. Marcus watches me prepare his morning coffee from the kitchen doorway. I haven't touched mine in days, dumping it in the sink when he's not looking. Playing the role of dutiful wife while my hands shake from withdrawal of whatever they've been giving me. You seem better, he says, accepting the cup. More focused. Dr. Reynolds adjusted my medication. The lie comes easily now. The doctor's actual diagnosis sits in my purse. Clean blood work, no trace of the drugs they claimed I needed. Helen breezes in, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. Darling, you're joining us for the foundation meeting today, yes? My heart races. The foundation. Their perfect money laundering facade. Of course. Wonderful. She touches my cheek, her fingers cold. We need to discuss the upcoming audit. Such tedious business. Marcus's phone rings. As he steps out, Helen's smile hardens. I had the most interesting chat with Oliver Thompson yesterday. My blood freezes. Keep calm. Keep recording. Oh? He mentioned seeing you at his office. She opens her designer bag, removes a manila envelope. Made me wonder what else you've been up to. Photos spill across the counter. Me entering Oliver's building. Sophie carrying files. The timestamp shows yesterday. You've been watching me. We protect what's ours. Helen's voice drops. Like we protected Marcus from his first wife when she became unstable. What happened to her? What happens to all threats to this family? She slides the photos back into the envelope. They're handled. The recording device feels heavier. One confession down. Is that what I am? A threat? Oh, sweetheart. Her laugh chills me. You're barely an inconvenience, though I must admit you've lasted longer than expected. Marcus returns, phone still in hand. That was Dr. Reynolds. He's concerned about your missed appointments. I've been busy. Too busy for your mental health? Helen tuts. After everything we've done to help you? My fingers curl around my coffee cup. One push and it would spill across the incriminating photos. But that's not enough. I need more. The foundation audit. I say carefully. Maybe I could help review the numbers? Marcus and Helen exchange looks. You're not well enough for that. Marcus says softly, dangerously. But I feel better, clearer. I force a smile. Unless there's something you don't want me to see? Helen's hand shoots out, grabs my wrist. Her manicured nails dig into my skin. Listen carefully, dear. You're having an episode. Paranoid delusions. If you continue this way, we'll have no choice but to seek more intensive treatment options. The threat hangs heavy, like his first wife, like all their problems that conveniently disappear. My phone buzzes. Sophie. Oliver found something big. Get out now. You're hurting me, I tell Helen, loud enough for the recorder to catch. She releases me, smile back in place. Just concerned about your welfare, dear. We all are. Marcus steps closer, boxing me in. Why don't I drive you to Dr. Reynolds, right now? The same tone he used that night on the dirt road. Actually, I steady my voice. I'm meeting Sophie for lunch. Cancel it. Not a request. No. The word hangs between us. Small, dangerous. Marcus's hand finds my shoulder, squeezing. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I shrug off his hand. And I'm late. I grab my purse, heart pounding. Helen calls after me. Don't forget the charity gala tomorrow night, dear. Everyone's so worried about you. I make it to my car, hands shaking as I text Sophie. Got it, Helen confessed, but they know about Oliver. Her response is immediate. Change of plans, meet at the backup location, don't trust your phone. As I pull away, I catch Helen watching from the window, phone to her ear. Marcus gets into his car. They'll follow me, of course. But for the first time, I want them to. Sometimes the best trap is the one they think they're setting themselves. The charity gala sparkles with false promises, just like everything else in the Carter family empire. I adjust my cream silk gown, Helen's latest attempt to dress me like a doll, and watch the security team sweep the ballroom for recording devices. They won't find anything. Not yet. You look pale, Marcus whispers, his hand possessive on my lower back. Perhaps we should skip the presentation. And disappoint your mother? I force a smile. Never. Across the room, Sophie catches my eye. She's positioning herself near the audiovisual controls just as planned. Oliver stands by the bar, chatting with board members, laying groundwork. Helen glides over, champagne in hand. Darling, Dr. Reynolds is here. He's quite concerned about your stability. I spot him in the crowd, the doctor they bought to help gaslight me into submission. My hands shake slightly, and Marcus's grip tightens. I'm fine, I say. but my voice wavers. The room spins slightly. Something's wrong. The champagne. I only took one sip. Are you sure? Helen's concern sounds genuine. Perfect for our audience. You're trembling. Marcus leads me toward a quiet corner. Maybe you should sit down. No. Not now. Not when we're so close. I see Sophie moving toward the stage, flash drive in hand. But my vision's blurring. They must have known. Must have planned for this. What did you give me? I managed to whisper. Marcus's smile is gentle. Terrible. Just something to help with your anxiety, sweetheart. Dr. Reynolds prescribed it specially. The room tilts. I stumble and Marcus catches me, playing the devoted husband perfectly. Ladies and gentlemen, Helen's voice carries across the ballroom. I'm afraid my daughter-in-law is having one of her episodes. If we could clear the room. No. I push away from Marcus, fighting the drug's pull. Sophie now. But Sophie isn't at the controls anymore. Instead, a security guard is leading her out, flash drive nowhere in sight. Oliver's gone too. Looking for this? Helen holds up the drive, her smile razor sharp. Really, dear? Did you think we wouldn't have contingencies? The room's watching now. Witnesses to my breakdown, just as they planned. Tell them, I say, my words slurring. Tell them about Marcus's first wife. Poor thing, Helen says to the crowd. She's been having these paranoid delusions, imagining conspiracies, making accusations. The foundation. I try again, but my legs give out. Marcus catches me, scoops me up like a child. Dr. Reynolds, he calls. We need that sedative now. I see the needle approaching, see the pity in the guest's eyes. The story's already writing itself. Another unstable Carter wife, another tragic breakdown. The recording. I whisper, reaching for the device in my bra, but my fingers find nothing. Helen holds up my recorder, shakes her head sadly. Found during the security sweep, dear, along with quite a few other concerning items. The needle slides in. The room grows darker. You'll get the help you need, Marcus promises, loud enough for everyone to hear. Just like we helped Elizabeth. Elizabeth, his first wife's name. He's never said it before. As consciousness fades, I see Dr. Reynolds writing in his chart. See Helen directing security to clear the room. See Sophie being escorted out, her face devastated. They won't just discredit me now. They'll erase me, like Elizabeth, like all their other problems. The last thing I hear is Helen's voice, dripping with manufactured concern. We'll take good care of her. The private facility is very discreet. The darkness takes me, but not before I feel Marcus slip something into my clutch bag. Something small and hard. A phone. Not mine. His fingers brush my ear as he pretends to stroke my hair, whispers words meant only for me. Should have stayed quiet, love. Now we'll have to make this permanent. The sedative pulls me under, but one thought remains. They think they've won. They don't know about the second recorder, the one Oliver planted in Helen's own purse. The private facility's walls are stark white, but the recording playing through the boardroom speakers paints them blood red. Helen's voice fills the room. Like we handled Elizabeth. A tragic accident, of course. These unstable women, they do such desperate things. I watch Marcus's face as his mother's confession plays. Watch the color drain from his features as she details Elizabeth's final days. The treatment that wasn't treatment at all. Turn it off, Helen commands, but Oliver, standing by the audiovisual controls, doesn't move. The board members shift uncomfortably in their seats. 3 days I've been in this facility, playing the broken wife, while Sophie and Oliver gathered the board for this emergency meeting. Mrs. Carter, one director speaks up. Are you saying you deliberately... She's clearly manipulated the recording. Helen interrupts. My disturbed daughter-in-law has evidence of every transaction. Oliver cuts in, sliding folders across the table. Every shell company. Every bribe to Dr. Reynolds. Every cent stolen from Elizabeth's estate after her accident. Marcus stands abruptly. This is absurd. Autumn needs help. Like Elizabeth needed help? I asked quietly. The sedatives they thought they were giving me sit untouched in my pocket. Tell them, Marcus. Tell them how she fought back. How she found the evidence, just like I did. You don't know what you're talking about. But his hand trembles as he reaches for his water glass. The Foundation's real books, Oliver announces, distributing more documents. Notice the signature on the transfer orders, the dates, the amounts. Helen's composure cracks. You're working with him? After what Marcus did to your company? Exactly because of what he did. Oliver's smile is cold. I owed Elizabeth that much. We were building a case together before her accident. The boardroom door opens. A police detective enters, followed by Dr. Reynolds in handcuffs. The doctor's been very cooperative, the detective says, especially about Elizabeth Carter's toxicology reports. Marcus lunges for the door, but security blocks his path. You can't prove anything. Actually, Sophie steps forward, holding up Helen's purse. Your mother's recorder caught quite a bit during your private conversation last night. About making my treatment permanent? About Elizabeth's convenient accident? Helen's mask finally shatters. We did for the family. These women, they come in with their ambitions, their independence. They try to ruin everything we've built. No, Mother. I stand, steady on my feet for the first time in days. You did this. You and Marcus. Elizabeth saw it. I saw it. And now everyone sees it. You stupid girl. Marcus's voice drops to that dangerous whisper I know so well. You think this ends here? You think you've won? Actually, the detective steps forward. This ended the moment you slipped that phone into her bag at the gala. The one recording your entire confession about Elizabeth's murder. Marcus goes very still. What? I pull out his phone, the one he thought would record my final drug-induced confession. You should really check devices before using them as weapons. Oliver's quite good with technology. The detective moves forward with handcuffs. Helen crumples into her chair, her carefully constructed world falling apart. The board votes to freeze all assets, a director announces, and to cooperate fully with the investigation. As they lead Marcus past me, he hisses, I made you. You're nothing without me. No, I reply softly. I remade myself, despite you. The boardroom empties, leaving me with Sophie and Oliver. Through the window, I watch police escort Helen and Marcus to waiting cars. Elizabeth would be proud, Oliver says quietly. It was never just about revenge, I tell him. It was about justice. For her. For all of us they tried to erase. Sophie hugs me tightly. Ready to go home? I look around the facility where they thought they'd imprison me, just like they imprisoned Elizabeth. Where they thought they'd write my ending. Yes, I say. But not to their home. To mine. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's surviving to tell the story yourself. The courthouse steps feel different under my feet today. No more designer heels Helen chose. I wear my own shoes, make my own stride. Marcus waits by his lawyer's car, out on bail for the preliminary hearing. His expensive suit hangs loose, his charm weathered by 6 weeks in custody. When he sees me, something desperate flashes in his eyes. Autumn, wait. He hurries over, keeping just beyond the restraining order's limit. We can fix this. Everything I did for us. No. I meet his gaze steadily. You did it for yourself. Like you did with Elizabeth. Elizabeth was weak. His mask slips, showing the darkness beneath. But you're different. Stronger. We could rebuild everything, better than before. I almost laugh at how well I know this script now. The manipulation, the false promises, the carefully crafted words designed to make me doubt myself. The board approved the merger with Oliver's company this morning. I tell him, your mother's foundation is being dissolved. Assets redistributed to the victims' families. His features contort. You're working with him? After everything I told you about how he tried to expose your fraud years ago? How he and Elizabeth were building a case before her accident? I adjust my blazer. Corporate armor, not silk chains. Yes, he told me everything. The real everything. A court officer approaches. Mrs. Carter, they're ready for your testimony. Marcus steps forward, desperation breaking through. Don't do this, please, If you say you love me, I cut him off. I'll add perjury to your charges. Inside, I pass Helen being led to a conference room. Her designer clothes are gone, replaced by department store beige. She won't meet my eyes. Sophie waits by the courtroom doors. Ready? Almost. I pull an envelope from my bag, the one I found in Oliver's office last night. Elizabeth's last letter, the one she tried to mail before they stopped her. Sophie's eyes widen. Have you read it? No. I turn the envelope over, seeing the name written in desperate strokes. Oliver Thompson. Some stories aren't mine to know. I hand it to the bailiff, watching him deliver it to Oliver in the gallery. Watch him recognize the handwriting, his hands trembling as he holds the last words of the woman he couldn't save. The judge calls the court to order. I take my place at the witness stand, feeling Marcus's stare, Helen's carefully constructed indifference, but they don't matter anymore. Their power was always an illusion, built on secrets and silence. The prosecutor rises. Please state your name for the record. I lean into the microphone, my voice clear and strong. Autumn Ellis. My own name again, not theirs. Former Chief Financial Officer of Carter Industries. Marcus flinches at the title, the position Oliver offered, the one Helen always said I wasn't qualified for. The irony doesn't escape me. As I begin my testimony, I see Sophie typing notes, Oliver clutching Elizabeth's letter, the victims' families hanging on every word. My story weaves with theirs now, a tapestry of survival and justice. The truth spills out, not in angry torrents, but in precise, devastating facts. Account numbers, dates, conversations recorded when they thought I was broken. Each detail another brick in the wall that will keep them from hurting anyone else. When I finish, Marcus's lawyer has no questions, no way to twist this narrative. Outside, rain begins to fall. I think of that night on the dirt road, how lost I felt, how far I've come. Sophie touches my arm. Oliver's waiting with the merger papers. In a minute, I watch Marcus and Helen being led away, their facades finally crumbling. They taught me well, about power, about manipulation, about revenge. But they never understood the most important lesson. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemies, but in rebuilding everything they tried to break, including yourself.
At 17 years old, I find myself in a dire situation, having been forced out of the house my father left me after his passing. My mother and stepfather have drastically transformed my home, converting my bedroom into a nursery, and unjustly branding me a freeloader in an effort to expel me. My family life has never been idyllic. My parents struggled with infertility for years until my mother miraculously conceived me. Despite their initial joy, the marriage was strained and fraught with frequent, intense arguments. These conflicts often centered around my father's gambling and my mother's drinking, habits they both vowed to quit. Yet, my mother secretly continued to drink throughout her pregnancy, causing a severe rift that escalated to a dangerous altercation involving a thrown pair of scissors, resulting in a serious injury to my father. My grandparents often shared with me the volatile nature of my parents' relationship. After I was born, my parents seemed briefly unified in their care for me, but the harmony was short-lived. My father would return from work to find my mother incapacitated by alcohol, neglecting her duties as a mother, while I was left in distress. This pattern of neglect continued, and the home environment deteriorated, with my mother often drunk and the house in chaos. My grandmother would visit to find me unkempt and the house in disarray. After numerous attempts to intervene, she finally convinced my father to place my mother in a rehabilitation centre and took me into her care for several months. Today, I am urgently seeking guidance on how to handle the current crisis, being evicted from my own home by my mother and her new partner. This upheaval has left me disoriented and desperate for advice on navigating this complex and painful chapter of my life. Living with my grandmother were the happiest days of my life. She nurtured me with bedtime stories, nutritious meals, and frequent trips to the park. A sharp contrast to the home I knew. Unlike my mother, who was quick to anger, my grandmother offered a calm and loving presence. She never scolded me harshly or punished me for accidents, such as breaking a plate. Under her care, I felt genuinely safe and loved, something that seemed almost motherly, surpassing anyone else's attempts to look after me. I cherished her deeply, unable to imagine surviving without her. Despite frequent visits from my father, who relayed messages of longing from my mother, I dreaded the thought of returning home. My wish was to stay with my grandmother indefinitely. However, when my mother achieved sobriety and proudly showed her AA sobriety chip, she immediately came to take me back. It was unsettling to see her after such a long separation. She seemed like a stranger to me. We were told I'd move back with my parents that weekend. Despite my protests, my mother insisted, emphasizing her role as my parent. Returning to a house filled with dark memories was painful. The transition affected me deeply, leading to an eating disorder at just 5 years old. My parents sought family therapy, helping us mend our past slowly. Life seemed to improve. My parents stopped fighting, my mother remained sober, and my father reduced his work hours to be more present. However, stability shattered the day my dad and I returned home to find my mother with another man. The confrontation that followed was intense, with accusations flying and blame shifting. My father was devastated, demanding she leave. That night, my grandmother picked me up amidst the chaos. I stayed with her for 5 weeks as my parents tried to sort out their marriage. Despite my mother's daily calls pretending to care, I felt her self-interest was her true priority. My dad eventually chose to stay in the marriage, pushing for counselling. Despite this, my view of my mother was irreparably altered. As if our family hadn't faced enough turmoil, mere months later, my father was diagnosed with stomach cancer, following severe pains that led to his collapse at work. This sequence of events only added to the complexities of my childhood, marking a profound period of my life filled with both deep love and painful betrayals. As my father's health deteriorated rapidly, we faced long days filled with chemotherapy sessions and restful recovery periods. Dad had set aside some savings, and my grandmother was ready to assist financially, but my mum struggled with the situation. She often lamented about the burdensome costs and emotional toll of the medical treatments. My dad suggested she take up part-time work to help, reassuring her that he'd resume his role as the primary breadwinner once he recovered. Reluctantly, she started working as an expediter at a restaurant, often returning home late into the night. During this challenging time, my grandmother would drive my father to and from the hospital. Meanwhile, our neighbour, who had a daughter my age named Amelia, generously offered to drive me to school each day. Amelia and I quickly became inseparable friends, bonded by our daily routines and shared experiences. Although many in our neighbourhood were aware of my family's tumultuous situation due to frequent loud arguments at home, Amelia's family welcomed me into their lives. They often invited me over for meals, countering my mother's harsh view that I was just a charity case to them. To Amelia's family, I was more like an extended member, even making sure to have apple pie, a personal favourite, ready when I visited. Amelia's parents also introduced me to basketball, with her dad spending evenings teaching me the game. This family provided a sense of normalcy and belonging that was starkly absent in my own home. Eventually, Amelia and I began dating, a relationship that brought a tremendous amount of positivity into my life, despite my complicated family dynamics. Unfortunately, my mother never warmed up to Amelia or her family, yet their kindness never wavered. A year into my father's battle with cancer, his doctors delivered the devastating news that the chemotherapy was no longer effective, and he didn't have much time left. This realization broke our hearts, and I struggled to grasp the impending loss of my dad, the one parent who consistently showed me love. In his final months, Dad made every effort to spend as much time with me, my mum, and my grandmother as possible. One morning, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. The pain of losing him was overwhelming, and I was inconsolable until my grandmother arrived to provide some comfort. At my father's funeral, an unexpected revelation came during the reading of his will. It turned out he had left everything, his house and remaining assets, to me. My mother was visibly shocked and questioned the lawyer, even inquiring if there was a way to contest the will in court. Dad's decision was made when he was of sound mind, reflecting his desire to secure a stable future for me, free from the financial and emotional instability my mother might bring. My mum's displeasure was evident, but the legal standing of the will was solid, leaving her with no real basis to challenge it. This provision by my father not only aimed to protect me, but also to ensure that I had the resources needed for a good start in life, something he deeply cared about. As I navigated these complex family dynamics, I became ever more grateful for the support of my grandmother and Amelia's family, who stood by me through the most challenging times. When my father passed away, all I had left of him was our family home, filled with memories. So, when my mother suggested selling the house to move somewhere better shortly after his death, I was adamant about staying. Despite her clear disappointment, she didn't have a say in the matter and continued living there with me. However, just a couple of months later, she dropped another bombshell. She had reconnected with someone and wanted me to meet him. My surprise turned to dismay when I realised it was John, the same man she'd been involved with years earlier, the one my dad and I had caught her with. I couldn't hide my disgust when we met at a restaurant and he reached out to shake my hand. I refused, incredulous that my mother would think I'd accept him. As they displayed affection openly, my mum tried to explain that rekindling with John was just her way of finding happiness after Dad's passing. But their coziness only fueled my suspicion and resentment, reminding me of the late nights she'd returned home during Dad's illness, claiming overtime work that might have been clandestine meetings with John instead. The dinner was uncomfortable, and I ignored John's attempts at conversation. My mother was furious with me for being rude to her boyfriend and claimed marrying John would provide me with a positive role model. I flatly rejected the idea, telling her I'd rather live alone than with someone who had betrayed my father. Despite my objections, she married John, and he moved into our house, asserting his dominance and even removing photos of my dad and me from the living room to the basement, claiming they needed a fresh start. John's controlling nature didn't stop with my mother. He tried to impose curfews on me too, but I stood my ground, reminding him he wasn't my father. My evenings were spent either at Amelia's house or at the library, where I could study in peace, away from the tense atmosphere at home. Throughout this period, I maintained a close relationship with my grandmother, finding solace in our visits filled with old movies and memories. As I navigated my high school years under these strained circumstances, my mother's presence in my life continued to wane. She didn't attend my high school graduation, which didn't surprise me, though it was still a disappointment. Thankfully, my grandmother and Amelia's parents were there to support and celebrate with me. That very evening, as I was preparing to go out with friends, my mother informed me that now that I was an adult, I needed to take responsibility around the house. Confused, since I had always contributed, I realised this was yet another way for her and John to assert control. However, with the support of my grandmother and friends, I was determined to forge my own path, undeterred by the challenges at home. Right after my high school graduation, my mother dropped a bombshell. It was time for me to get a job and start contributing financially to the household expenses. She mentioned that John felt I wasn't pulling my weight. Although I was frustrated by the timing, she didn't even give me a day to celebrate my achievements. I agreed to help out and soon landed a job at Burger King. Alongside this, I applied to various colleges and was accepted into a local college, which meant I could save money by living at home instead of needing campus housing. However, I did need a car for commuting to classes. When I approached my mum about possibly helping me with purchasing a car, both she and John reacted negatively. John accused me of being selfish, despite the tight finances they claimed to have. My mother sided with him, telling me I was on my own. This response was particularly hard to swallow a few weeks later when I discovered workers remodelling our kitchen and bathroom. It seemed they suddenly had funds for home improvements, but not enough to help me with a basic necessity like a car. My confusion turned to frustration when my mother dismissed my inquiries about the remodel, accusing me of feeling entitled. As the house transformations continued, I kept to myself, feeling increasingly isolated. Amelia, my girlfriend, noticed my distress and did her best to support me. However, the situation escalated when I came home one day to find my belongings piled in the living room. My mother and John called me downstairs for a serious talk and excitedly announced that my mother was pregnant with John's child. They had been keeping the pregnancy a secret for over 3 months. John then stated that they planned to convert my bedroom into a nursery for the new baby and that it was time for me to move out. They described me as a freeloader and suggested that I move in with my grandmother until I could afford a place of my own. Feeling utterly rejected and unwanted, I didn't argue. I quickly called an Uber, grabbed my important documents, and left for my grandmother's house. She was just as shocked and angered by their treatment of me. While she was eager to confront my mother, I wanted to seek legal advice first to understand my rights in this bewildering situation. The whole ordeal had left me reeling, but at least I had the support of my grandmother during this difficult time. Having recently turned 17, I found myself in the middle of a legal and emotional battle regarding the ownership of my family home. The house was legally mine, according to my father's will, yet my mother and her new husband John were living there. Uncertain of my next steps, I decided to consult with a lawyer to understand my rights and the legal procedures I needed to follow. The lawyer confirmed that the house was rightfully mine and advised that the first legal step was to issue a formal eviction notice to my mother and John. If they failed to comply, I could then proceed with legal action against them. Armed with this information, I felt a mix of relief and resolve. With my grandmother by my side for support, I visited the house while my mother and John were out. I didn't bother ringing the doorbell. Instead, I called Amelia's dad, who kindly agreed to help me change the locks on both the front and back doors. By the time my mother and John returned, the locks were changed, and I was ready to confront them. Standing on the porch with my grandmother, I refused to let them inside. My grandmother, undaunted by John's visible fury, firmly told them they had 26 days to vacate the premises as I had plans to sell the house. I handed them the eviction notice, which my lawyer had prepared, outlining the 26-day period and the legal ramifications of non-compliance. John, red with anger, crumpled the notice, but my grandmother coolly informed him that his actions wouldn't change their situation. As the confrontation escalated, my mother began to plead, citing the stress of her pregnancy and the inconvenience of moving. However, years of neglect and resentment boiled over, and I couldn't hold back. I rebuked her for her years of absence and neglect, especially during the time she was incapacitated by alcohol rather than caring for me. I told her it was time she and John stopped relying on me and found their own place. Despite her pleas, I stood firm, driven by years of feeling unsupported and exploited. John, realizing his keys no longer worked, began to yell, but it was clear the locks were changed and their time in the house was coming to an end. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. Having just turned 17, I was thrust into a challenging position of asserting my rights over the family home, as per my late father's will. During a tense confrontation, I told John that he was technically trespassing, and I wouldn't hesitate to call the police if they didn't start preparing to leave. It was both gratifying and sobering to assert such authority, emphasizing the reality that I was ready to take legal actions if needed, which could potentially deplete their finances while I recovered costs through the sale of the house. I firmly stated that I had nothing to lose and my grandmother and I would be staying in the house to ensure they were actively moving out. Caught off guard, John and my mum tried to retaliate, but I stood my ground. I reminded them that as the legal owner, I set the rules, and if they found them too harsh, they were free to find temporary accommodations elsewhere. I even offered to move their belongings to the porch myself. Their expressions mixed with anger and desperation, but it was clear that the dynamics had shifted. This was my house, and it was time for them to respect that. As word of our family dispute spread through a viral TikTok post in our small town, I addressed online queries about the 26-day notice. It was a precaution advised by my lawyer to ensure there was no legal backlash against me. Regarding the money John spent on home renovations, I stated that I was willing to reimburse him if he provided legitimate bills, as verified by my lawyer. Many also wondered why my grandmother and I chose to stay in the house during this period. The reason was straightforward: to prevent any claims from them about their rights to the property, especially since they weren't paying rent. I also refused to give them a key, underscoring their lack of tenancy rights. Despite their initial compliance, my mum and John eventually tried to overstay their eviction notice. I took decisive action by moving their belongings to the porch while they were out. When they returned and unsuccessfully attempted to involve the police, I provided proof of ownership, and the officers informed them that their only recourse was through the courts. Faced with this reality, they had no choice but to leave. In the aftermath, I secured my property with surveillance cameras and began the process of selling the house. I've been working with a mortgage broker who will start showing the house to potential buyers soon. This ordeal has been a tough but vital lesson in standing up for my rights and handling my affairs independently. As the middle child among 4 siblings, I've often felt overlooked. My older sister Ellie, 28, and younger sister Sophia, 26, along with my brother Michael, 27, have consistently received more financial and emotional support from our parents. To illustrate, my siblings were gifted a total of $710,000 by our parents for various needs and life events, while I received none of that support. Despite my lack of comparable support, my siblings have the habit of belittling the modest wedding my wife and I paid for ourselves. At a recent family dinner, the usual undercurrents of comparison and favoritism surfaced yet again. My siblings boasted about the lavish weddings and minimal student loans funded by our parents, while casually dismissing the financial independence I had to maintain during my education. I attended a prestigious furniture designing school, which, while paid, required me to live at home and pay rent. My parents provided $7,000 for my tools, a sum they equate to the substantial amounts given to my siblings. But the disparity is stark. The final straw came when my brother casually mentioned a spontaneous date night he had the previous Friday, the same night my parents cancelled plans with my wife and me last minute to babysit his children. That night, I had prepared a special dinner at home, which was supposed to include my parents. Learning that their cancellation was to facilitate my brother's date night felt like a betrayal, especially since the effort I made to cook a favourite family recipe was overlooked. Frustrated and feeling undervalued, I left the dinner quietly with my wife, unable to confront the blatant favouritism at that moment. Later, when my mother called to inquire about my abrupt departure, I expressed my feelings of being marginalised and the constant comparisons drawn by my siblings. While she did not say much, the silence spoke volumes. This conversation later circulated among my siblings, leading to further accusations that I was ruining family gatherings by bringing up these issues. Despite the accusations of being immature for keeping score, the truth is that the scores are not only kept, but also used against me by my siblings and implicitly condoned by my parents. It's painful to recognise that standing up for oneself might alienate family, but it's also crucial for my own well-being. I now find myself at a crossroads, contemplating the value of maintaining relationships that consistently make me feel less valued. I bear a striking resemblance to my paternal grandfather, so much so that it's hard to deny my lineage. Interestingly, my eyes were blue at birth, but developed a brown ring around the iris as I grew older, just like his. This physical trait underscores my connection to my father's side of the family. Regarding the issues around my wedding, my sister Sophia is actually on my side, feeling terrible about the misunderstandings. It came as a surprise to her that our parents didn't contribute financially to my wedding as promised. She only learned this 3 months after her own wedding. Initially, she thought they might have helped with my house purchase because there had always been a verbal understanding that funds were set aside for such purposes. Unfortunately, I ended up covering my wedding expenses entirely on my own, which broke the long-standing promise of financial support for significant life events. Sophia's own wedding was a grand affair, not by her choice, but orchestrated by my mother and Aunt Ellie. They wanted it to be lavish, and that's exactly what it was. Sophia and her husband often spend time with my wife and me when they visit, continuing a long-standing pattern of closeness between us. Despite receiving many unasked for favours from the family, possibly as a way to compensate for a challenging early childhood, Sophia has always made an effort to share whatever she can with me. As for confronting my family, I had a profound conversation with my mother recently, lasting about an hour and a half. It was the first time I managed to discuss multiple grievances without interruption, marking the most comprehensive discussion we've ever had. Sophia has consistently shown empathy towards me. She understands that it wasn't her place to oversee the fairness managed by the adults around us. Commenting on our family dynamics, if I weren't related to them, I'd still choose to be around Sophia and her husband, as well as my grandparents. My maternal grandfather and I share a unique bond over our similar sensory needs due to my autism, which he likely shares. We've often skipped family gatherings to enjoy quieter activities together. This clarity about our family's dynamics and my connection to my father is something I've shared in pieces before, but I'm consolidating here for clearer understanding. Despite the challenges and discrepancies in how we were treated, my younger sister has always strived to rectify what she can, even from a young age. This situation isn't about questioning my paternity. It's about addressing and hopefully mending the inconsistencies in how we've been supported by our parents. My sister, Sophia, hasn't witnessed every challenge I've faced, but she's done her best to address the issues she knows about. While she tends to think the best of people and might not probe as deeply as she could, accusing her of heartlessness misses the mark. After sharing my post, we had a long discussion where she revealed that since at least 2020, she believed she was contributing towards a birthday gift for me each year. She'd been giving money to our older sister to buy tickets for my wife and me to see my favourite soccer team. Whenever we posted about attending games, Sophia assumed we were enjoying the gift she helped fund. Sophia and I have always had a good relationship. She has never singled me out or treated me unfairly. In fact, she and her husband often spend time just with me and my wife, enjoying each other's company. My bond with my maternal grandfather also stands out. We share similar personalities, which became apparent even when I was young. I believe if he were born in a different time, he might have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum like me. We both find noisy, crowded environments overwhelming, often retreating to quieter activities during family gatherings. Over the years, my grandfather and I have often excused ourselves from the noise to engage in quieter activities like playing bocce or cooking. He has recognised the disparities in how I'm treated compared to my siblings, and in the last few years, he's begun giving me items that he wants me to enjoy now and keep after he's gone. This has caused some tension within the family. My grandfather is quite affluent, and my older siblings have accused me of trying to enrich myself through potential inheritances. I don't know the specifics of my grandfather's will, and I've never felt it was my place to ask. He's always been meticulous about fairness, ensuring everyone receives equal gifts during holidays. I expect him to handle his estate in a similar fashion, likely leaving a significant portion to charity. While my siblings might see financial potential in his record collection or the antique furniture he's given me, I value these items for their sentimental worth. The idea of selling them seems both disrespectful and against his intentions. They're particularly upset about him giving me his first nice car. While it does have some market value, to me it's priceless as a memento of the time we've spent together. I've invested in maintaining it, cherishing it as more than just a vehicle. My siblings contest that these gifts show favoritism, but the financial support they've received from our parents far outweighs the sentimental gifts from my grandfather. As I've grown older, my paternal grandmother has also shown me increasing favour, not in terms of money, but through her time and attention. My grandma doesn't have much in terms of financial wealth to pass down, and I've never expected her to leave me an inheritance. However, she owns an old clock crafted by a local clockmaker, encased in a handmade cabinet. Ever since I was a child, this clock fascinated me, and she noticed my interest. Unprompted by me, she placed labels inside it when I was around 7 or 8 years old, stating that the clock would belong to me. While I cherish this gesture deeply, my affection for her isn't tied to what I might inherit. I genuinely enjoy spending time with her. She's an amusing and engaging companion. My wife and I often take walks with her and our dogs, and during holidays, she prefers staying in our home over the guest house my parents built for her. Some of my siblings seem to think she supports me financially, but that's not the case. She's not in a position to provide financial help, and our relationship is based on mutual affection rather than material gain. Looking ahead, my wife and I are planning to meet with my parents next week to discuss family dynamics. I'm not entirely sure what to expect, but we're preparing by writing down our thoughts and concerns. One of the topics I intend to bring up is the possibility of family therapy. Recently, after my initial post, we had a frank discussion with my parents. I laid out in detail the financial discrepancies between what my siblings received and what was given to me. It turned out that during my time at the textile, I had paid more in rent to my parents than they had ever spent on my professional tools. After doing the math, the financial support varied massively among us siblings, ranging from a high of $710,000 for Sophia to a low of $110,000 for me. This realization was infuriating, and for the first time, my parents acknowledged that they hadn't fully grasped the extent of the imbalance until we discussed each gift and financial contribution case by case. The conversation that night didn't end on a productive note. My father conceded that my calculations were likely conservative, but offered no real explanation for their oversight. My siblings Michael and Ellie reacted with increasing hostility, continuing to aggravate the situation through calls and texts to me and other family members. Since that confrontation, I haven't spoken to them and don't foresee reconciliation soon. A week after our initial meeting, my parents requested another discussion. They admitted they thought I was doing well enough on my own and didn't need their financial support as much as my siblings might have. They recognised that they lived beyond their means at times, favouring my older siblings with financial help that they couldn't extend to me, particularly around the time of my wedding, which coincided with a significant financial low for them, resulting in their inability to contribute as they had promised. They even acknowledged covering substantial expenses for Sophia, such as her tuition, car, and apartment during that period. They have since offered money, likely as a gesture to address past inequities. My parents have offered to cover vacations, buy a car, and provide various gifts, but I don't think they fully understand our feelings. My wife and I genuinely don't want their money right now. We're still figuring out what the ideal resolution looks like for us. At least they've acknowledged that they haven't been fair and are willing to work on our relationship. We spent Easter with Sophia, her husband, and my grandparents. My parents joined us in the evening, and this seems to be our new normal for the time being. However, there's a part of me that worries about the future, especially regarding financial matters. I have a feeling they might eventually ask us for financial help as they approach the end of their lives. That's one reason I'm hesitant to accept any gifts from them now. if nothing changes in our relationship between now and their retirement, I wouldn't feel guilty about not supporting them. I believe that Sophia and her husband would step in to ensure our parents didn't end up in dire circumstances. Still, I wouldn't want to feel pressured to help financially, especially if I let them pay off my mortgage. I know my parents well enough to anticipate that they might use such a gesture as leverage against me later on. Right now, I don't wish them any harm. I just don't plan to help them out financially. They have a history of reckless spending, and I believe they continue to live beyond their means. I don't think my grandfather's lessons about frugality ever reached my mum. She seems to forget how tough things were when she was younger, before his company became successful. If she does remember, she doesn't seem to apply those lessons to her current situation. I suspect they don't have strong retirement savings, and I doubt they will manage their finances wisely, even if they do. I anticipate that they may be financially unstable within 5 years of retiring, and I want to avoid being guilted into helping them during that time. As for my brother Michael and his family, I don't believe they would feel responsible for helping our parents either. They earn good money, but often complain about being broke, which is puzzling because they aren't truly poor. They just have expensive tastes and surround themselves with questionable friends. Without addressing past grievances, Ellie would likely be resentful toward our parents for helping me out, even in small ways. If she thinks there's nothing left for her to inherit, I genuinely believe she wouldn't hesitate to abandon them if they squandered her potential inheritance. Regarding Sophia and the birthday gifts, there's a lot to unpack, but I'll keep it brief. Sophia and her husband had been giving a substantial amount of money to Ellie each year to buy tickets for my wife and me to see our favourite soccer team, the Union. Whenever we posted photos from the games, Sophia assumed at least one of those outings was her gift to us. In fact, she pointed out one of my Instagram posts from last year, which clearly labelled it as a birthday gift. This misunderstanding added to the complexities of our family dynamics, but I hope we can find a way to resolve these issues moving forward. I didn't mention earlier that the gift was actually from my wife. Looking back, it's clear that the comment Sophia left at the time suggested she was happy I was enjoying the gift she thought she'd given me. In reality, Ellie had been taking money from Sophia each year, supposedly to contribute to my birthday gift, but had been keeping it for herself. So, for at least 5 years, Ellie was essentially stealing a couple of $100s from Sophia annually. I have a lot of affection for Sophia and her husband. They are incredibly kind people. However, they are quite naive in some ways. Both of them grew up in wealthy families and were spoiled as children. As a result, they don't have a good sense of how much things actually cost in the real world. For instance, they genuinely believed that tickets to a game cost several times more than they really do. So when Ellie asked them for money each year for my birthday gift, they didn't think twice about handing over what she requested. Recently, Sophia and her husband found out about what Ellie had been doing, and they're no longer speaking to either of my siblings. They were genuinely shocked to learn that I hadn't been receiving gifts from my siblings at all. As a kind gesture, they took my wife and me to a game this spring and insisted on paying for everything. They did this completely unprompted, not because they felt it would make up for what happened, but simply because they wanted to do something nice for us. I won't pretend that Sophia is perfect or that it's not obvious she's been overly spoiled in her upbringing, but she makes a sincere effort not to be entitled. She and her husband have achieved financial success on their own and are generous with what they have. I recognise that she had advantages, but it's not fair to hold that against her. She didn't choose her upbringing, and she has never flaunted her wealth in my face. Unlike Michael and Ellie, she is genuinely mortified by how unfairly things have been handled. Michael and Ellie, on the other hand, are upset that the favouritism they enjoyed is no longer continuing. Someone asked if my parents are aware that Ellie has been stealing from Sophia. They are indeed aware. I know that they are still in contact with Ellie and her family, as well as with Michael and his family. Ellie and Michael are the ones who have given my parents grandchildren, and I don't expect or want my parents to cut them off completely. I don't intend to interfere in their relationship with my siblings. My parents know what Ellie did, and how they choose to handle it is up to them. In the meantime, my own relationship with my parents is strained and we are in low contact. I'd rather focus on that aspect of my life. I don't really have any meaningful relationship with either of my older siblings anymore, and I can't see myself ever caring enough to try to repair things. If either of them has a moment of realization, a come to Jesus moment, and genuinely wants to make things right, they know how to reach me. I wanted to share another thought about why I don't want money from my parents. I believe that if I accept money from them, which I'm not even sure they have, they will consider the matter settled and won't address the deeper issue, that I was treated differently all along, even without the financial disparity. Until I have reason to believe that any offer of money is coming from a sincere desire to make amends, and not just an attempt to buy back my forgiveness, I'm not interested. My wife and I both work hard and earn a good living. We are by far the least well off financially in my family, but we are comfortable. We have savings and retirement funds, which may be more than can be said for the others, except for Sophia and her husband. I don't see or speak to my parents as much as I used to, and so far that's been fine with me. If they want to genuinely reflect on their actions and try to make amends, I'm open to it. But that won't happen until they acknowledge the non-monetary favouritism as well. My grandparents are fully aware of the situation. They already knew that things were skewed in the family. Part of the reason I'm not overly concerned with settling the score, for lack of a better term, is that I've been told in no uncertain terms that I will come out of this situation better off. I now understand that any relationship with my brother or older sister is almost certainly beyond repair, and I've accepted that. I believe that allowing my parents to ease their conscience by simply throwing money at the problem will only prevent them from truly taking responsibility for their actions. It's important to me that they acknowledge how their favouritism affected me, not just financially but emotionally as well. To give some more context, growing up, I always felt like the odd one out in my family. Michael and Ellie were the golden children, and my parents doted on them. They received the best of everything: attention, support, opportunities, while I often felt overlooked. This favouritism extended into adulthood. When Michael and Ellie started their own families, my parents were overjoyed to become grandparents and invested even more time and resources into their lives. Meanwhile, my achievements and milestones were met with lukewarm enthusiasm at best. When I graduated from college, my parents didn't attend the ceremony. When I got married, they contributed very little to the wedding, both financially and emotionally. It became clear over the years that their favouritism wasn't just a phase, it was a deeply ingrained pattern. Discovering that Ellie had been stealing money from Sophia to supposedly buy me birthday gifts was just the tipping point. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the blatant disrespect and deceit within my own family. Sophia and her husband were appalled when they learned the truth, and their support has meant a lot to me. In conclusion, I have decided to distance myself from those family members who have caused me pain and disappointment. I am focusing on the positive relationships in my life, like the one I have with Sophia and her husband, and building a future with my wife. I hope that one day my parents will truly understand the impact of their actions and seek to make genuine amends. Until then, I am content to keep my distance and live my life on my own terms. My sister-in-law Ellie, who is 26 years old, is in the midst of planning her spring wedding. Interestingly, she has chosen my home as the venue, with 4 bedrooms, a swimming pool, and a large garden. My house is quite spacious, which explains her choice. Her fiancé and she anticipates hosting a number of his relatives who will need accommodation during the wedding festivities. She envisions an outdoor ceremony in our garden, followed by a dinner in our expansive living room. Here's where I find myself in a dilemma. While the idea of hosting her wedding at our home is flattering, I am uncertain about whether to agree. My relationship with my sister-in-law has always been complicated. Unlike my husband, who is a self-made man, having worked hard to achieve a master's degree and establish his career, his sister dropped out of college and relies heavily on their parents. She has adopted a lifestyle influenced by certain New Age thinkers who argue that academic degrees are not necessary for success, a stark contrast to the values with which I was raised. In my own family, my parents, though affluent, emphasized self-reliance and responsibility. They expected my brother and me to earn our way through college either by scholarships or student loans, instilling in us a strong work ethic and the importance of financial independence. This upbringing has served me well, as I now own a beautiful home, which I was encouraged to buy and manage financially by my father at a young age. I rarely interact with my in-laws due to our different lifestyles and values. While I maintain a cordial relationship with my mother-in-law, my interactions with my sister-in-law have been strained. She perceives my advice about finishing her education and starting a career as jealousy or criticism, further complicating our relationship. The financial strains her lifestyle imposes on her parents are also a concern, yet addressing this is delicate, given the family dynamics. Given all this, I'm turning to this forum for advice. Hosting the wedding could either mend relationships or deepen existing tensions. How should I approach this situation? Should I support my sister-in-law's wedding plans? Or should I set boundaries to maintain my own peace of mind? Despite facing challenges, my husband and I tried to support our 26-year-old daughter by suggesting she look for an office job. However, she and my in-laws didn't seem interested. Honestly, she hasn't shown much initiative, and although my in-laws are comfortable supporting her, I feel they could have encouraged her more to become independent. There are a few reasons why my sister-in-law is keen to have her wedding at our house. The primary reason is the convenience and space available. It would allow her to host the wedding, lunch, and dinner all in one location, without her guests needing to find a hotel. Additionally, she isn't in a position to rent a venue, meaning without our house, she would likely end up having a courthouse wedding due to financial constraints. My husband has left the decision up to me since it's our house, which is just one of the many reasons I love him so much. Now, I'm torn about whether to let her use our home for her wedding. The wedding is set for the day after tomorrow, and I've just discovered I'm not even invited, despite it being held at my house. Initially, I agreed to host the wedding, although I had reservations. But now I regret that decision and am quite upset. My sister-in-law isn't exactly the most genuine person. I recently found out that her fiancé is quite affluent, working as a financial analyst with a wealthy family background. Despite this, she portrayed our house as hers to impress them. I was aware of this lie, but overlooked it until now. When she and my in-laws requested to use our home, they mentioned it would save them from taking out a loan for the wedding, citing that, traditionally, the bride's family pays. However, this didn't sit right with me, and I pointed out that her fiancé could help finance it. Their insistence, combined with her deceit, has put me in a difficult position. Despite everything, I ultimately agreed to let them use our home, thinking it would only be for a couple of days. I've made arrangements to accommodate their needs and ensure my property is respected. Now, as the wedding approaches, I'm left feeling taken advantage of and somewhat excluded from an event in my own home. I agreed to help to maintain family harmony and protect their reputation, but I'm questioning if it was worth compromising my own principles and comfort. When my sister-in-law came over to check the preparations for her upcoming wedding at our house, she seemed thrilled with the arrangements. I had set up 3 guest rooms, and even rented a larger dining table for the special dinner. As she toured the house, she declared that her parents would take my bedroom, and she would take another room because it had a walk-in closet. Her excitement was palpable as she imagined showing off her big house filled with fancy things to her in-laws, eagerly anticipating their amazed reactions. I was taken aback and confused, especially when she suggested that my husband and I could stay at my parents' house or check into a hotel for a couple of days since we could afford it. This was all to maintain the illusion that this was her parents' house, not ours. The conversation left me feeling dizzy with disbelief. She planned to present our house as her own, living like a princess while we were displaced. She casually mentioned removing our family photos from the hallway to keep up her facade. The most shocking part came when I asked about the wedding itself. She nonchalantly informed me that we weren't invited to the wedding or the family dinner. It was as if she expected us to simply disappear during the event. When I expressed my astonishment, she admitted she hadn't sent an invitation and suggested that if it was such a big deal, my husband could attend alone and explain my absence by saying I was sick. She even laughed off my questions about her reasons for our exclusion, claiming she had told her in-laws we were estranged because we were too toxic. Angered and frustrated, I stormed off to my room, followed by my husband. He was just as stunned by the news and assured me that the final decision was still mine to make. In that moment, all I knew was that I needed some time to calm down and think things through rationally. This was not just about a wedding. It was about respect, boundaries, and the audacity of entitlement. I needed to decide how to handle this situation without letting emotions cloud my judgment. That doesn't mean I'm ready to yield to every demand of the so-called princess. I'm definitely not leaving my own house to play into her web of lies, and no matter what happens, I'll keep you all posted. First, I did give my sister-in-law a spare key to our house, after agreeing to let her use it for the wedding, because the main areas, front porch, living room, garden and pool, are all monitored by cameras. As for how her fiancé could believe this house was hers, it's puzzling. They've been dating for less than a year, and she only brought him here for a tour while I was at work, just 2 weeks before the wedding. After reading your comments, I discussed everything with my husband. Although he supports whatever decision I make, he was concerned about the repercussions on his sister's wedding and our parents' reputation if we withdrew our offer. We decided to talk to his parents directly. During the visit, we learned that they knew about the plan to exclude us from the wedding and seemed resigned to it. My husband was furious, and in the heat of the moment, he confronted them about their knowledge and compliance with this exclusion. The situation escalated quickly. My mother-in-law weakly justified their stance by saying they thought we were okay with not being invited, which was shocking to us. My father-in-law, sensing the tension, suggested that things might be resolved if my sister-in-law formally invited us. He gave my mother-in-law a stern look, prompting her to call my sister-in-law, who was at a spa. The call went on speaker, and it turned ugly fast. My sister-in-law complained about being disturbed and flatly refused to invite me, calling me a witch and expressing her fear that I would outshine her on her wedding day. She wants all eyes on her without anyone else stealing the spotlight with talk of careers, investments, or anything substantial, typical of her shallow concerns. She hung up abruptly, and I couldn't hold back. I retorted loudly, calling out her foolishness, and stormed out. My husband followed, and as we left, his parents promised to handle the situation and persuade her to apologise. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law had the audacity to text me, instructing me to remove our family portraits from the hallway and vacate the house before her fiancé and his family arrived at 9:10 a.m. the next day. She planned to arrive straight from the salon on her wedding day, expecting everything to be perfect. Her demands and the whole situation felt surreal, like she truly believed she was royalty orchestrating her grand entrance. Despite everything, I'm now left with a decision to make. I need to consider what standing my ground will mean for our family dynamics, but also how much of my own dignity I'm willing to sacrifice for this facade of a perfect wedding. When we arrived home late that afternoon, the first thing I did was call a locksmith to change the locks on our house. Later, my husband phoned his father to make it clear that we wouldn't be hosting the wedding and they needed to find an alternative venue quickly. He tried to reach my sister-in-law to discuss it directly, but she was unreachable, caught up in the revelry of her bachelorette party. My father-in-law, quite alarmed, called back, seeking advice on how to handle the situation without damaging his reputation. My husband suggested he inform the guests of the cancellation and offer a plausible excuse, firmly stating that the wedding would not proceed as initially planned at our home. That night, we couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and anticipation about how my sister-in-law would react once she discovered the change in plans. Early the next morning, at around 7:10 a.m, the wedding planner arrived ready to set up. I had to explain to him that the venue had changed, that there would be no wedding at my house. Confused, he mentioned that my sister-in-law and her fiancé had booked the place for their wedding day. I instructed him to contact them directly since my house was now off limits. About an hour later, an unexpected visitor appeared, my sister-in-law's fiancé. He was puzzled and concerned, having been unable to reach her. He introduced himself, assuming I was just another relative, since he had seen my pictures in the hallway before. I took a moment to explain the reality of the situation, that this was indeed my house, and I lived here, not my sister-in-law. I broke the news that the wedding would not be held here as I had rescinded the offer. His shock was evident, but before we could delve deeper into the conversation, he had to rush off to manage the unfolding crisis. By 10:10 a.m, the scene escalated when my sister-in-law arrived, furiously banging on my door, demanding answers. She tried to call my husband, incredulous over the eviction of the wedding planner and the cancellation at our home. My husband stood firm, advising her to seek an alternative venue. Her frustration boiled over into a loud confrontation, which only ended when the neighbours threatened to call the police. Following this, I blocked her number, though she continued to send a barrage of angry voicemails to my husband. Amid this chaos, my husband expressed his disappointment, but also noted that her entitlement and lack of gratitude had led to this point. She had assumed she could use our home without proper consent, exclude us from the wedding, and then blatantly disrespect us by labelling me maliciously. The fallout with my in-laws was significant. They blamed me for tarnishing their reputation, revealing a stark difference in our values and expectations. This situation forced me to reconsider our relationship and what I valued in my family interactions. It was clear that something had to change, not just for the sake of my dignity, but for the health of our family dynamics moving forward. After the fallout, it was clear that my in-laws were completely fine with their daughter excluding us from the wedding that was supposed to take place at our house. As for the wedding itself, it was abruptly cancelled on what was supposed to be a joyous day. My sister-in-law and her parents rushed to her fiancé's family, pleading for a postponement while they scrambled to find a new venue. Unfortunately, her fiancé, having seen through the lies, called out the dishonesty in front of everyone and decided not only to cancel the wedding, but also to reconsider the entire relationship. It's uncertain what the future holds for them now, but I'm relieved to be removed from the drama. It's been a few days since the would-have-been wedding day. The groom ended everything upon realising the extent of his ex-fiancé's deception. I don't blame him. Anyone entangled in such deceit might expect further lies down the road. Since then, my sister-in-law has been inconsolable, unfairly blaming me for the fallout. Her ex-fiancé stopped by recently to discuss everything. He apologised for the mess, although I reassured him that none of this was his fault. I felt a pang of guilt for not revealing the truth sooner, even though we had no prior relationship or means of direct communication. Still, I apologised for the ordeal. Meanwhile, my in-laws have been incessantly bad-mouthing me to my husband, urging him to assert more control rather than letting himself be dominated by me. My husband is considering blocking their calls permanently if their harassment doesn't cease. He's already distancing himself, and I'm staying out of this family conflict. Last Saturday, while I was enjoying breakfast, my sister-in-law showed up unannounced, banging on the door and screaming hysterically. It was like a scene from a horror movie. She accused me of ruining her wedding and her life, calling me selfish and vindictive. My husband was out at the time, so I faced her tirade alone, calmly sipping my coffee as she raged. A neighbour, alarmed by the noise, checked on me and called the police. By the time the officers arrived, she had fled, possibly because she hadn't thought to arrange a getaway car and had initially arrived by Uber. I explained the situation to the police with my neighbour as a witness, and they later went to my in-laws' house to find her. Later that evening, my in-laws phoned my husband, shouting accusations and blaming me for the police involvement. My husband had reached his limit. He hung up and blocked their numbers. Some might be curious about what happened to my sister-in-law, or if she faced any legal consequences, but honestly, my husband and I are done. We've decided to distance ourselves from all the toxicity and drama. Whatever happens to her, we've made peace with the fact that it's no longer our concern. We're moving on and focusing on our lives and well-being. I'm Ellie, a 27-year-old woman, and I've had a challenging relationship with my younger brother Michael, who's 24. Ever since he was born, it seemed like Michael was the star in our parents' eyes. They lavished him with attention and praise, often overlooking my needs and achievements. This favoritism only deepened as we grew up, creating a rift between us. Before Michael was born, I felt cherished and supported by our parents. They'd take me to the park, read bedtime stories to me, and proudly display my drawings on the fridge. However, once Michael came along, things took a drastic turn. He became the centre of their world, and it felt like I faded into the background. I vividly remember my 12th birthday disappointment. I had hoped for a bicycle, having hinted at it for months. Instead, I unwrapped clothes and books as my parents deemed a bike too costly. Shockingly, just 3 weeks later, they bought Michael a new bike for no particular occasion. When I questioned the unfairness, they simply said Michael needed more exercise than I did. This pattern of unequal treatment persisted. My academic achievements, like making the honour roll in middle school, were met with indifference. In contrast, Michael's average grades triggered family celebrations. During our teenage years, the disparity grew even starker. At 17, I got a job at a bakery to save for college, thrilled about earning my own money. Yet, when Michael complained about not having spending money, our parents forced me to share half of my earnings with him, threatening to make me quit if I refused. Michael felt entitled to my things throughout high school, my clothes, electronics, even my car once I had a license. Any complaints from me were dismissed by our parents, who preached about the importance of sharing. Despite feeling overlooked, I focused on my education, hoping it would bring me the recognition I craved. When I was accepted to my dream college with a scholarship, I was ecstatic. I imagined my parents would finally be proud, but their reaction was underwhelming. They simply nodded and moved on, further cementing my feelings of being second best. Given this background, I decided not to invite Michael to my wedding, seeking a day free from family dynamics. This decision led to my parents threatening to disown me. They even attempted to sabotage the event, but to their surprise, the day went perfectly, leaving them stunned and forced to reconsider their actions. This incident marked a pivotal moment in my life, highlighting the need for boundaries and self-respect in the face of lifelong favoritism. The incident was particularly memorable because it occurred just after a casual conversation about Michael's latest football game, highlighting the contrast in how our achievements were celebrated. A few years prior, when Michael was accepted into a local community college, our parents threw him an extravagant party, complete with extended family, catered food, and live music. Watching them celebrate what I saw as a relatively modest accomplishment filled me with a complex mix of hurt and resentment. My feelings of neglect deepened during my sophomore year of college. I had been diligently saving money to buy a high-quality camera for my photography class, which had become both my passion and my refuge from the stresses of my family dynamics. After extensive research, I had finally chosen the perfect camera that fit my budget. Excitedly, I returned home during winter break to make the purchase, only to discover that a significant portion of my savings was missing. I soon learned that Michael had taken the money without asking, using it to buy a new gaming console, When I confronted him, he nonchalantly suggested that I could simply save up again. Our parents, dismissive of my upset, advised me to have hidden my money better. This incident was my breaking point, making it painfully clear that I would never be a priority to them. In response, I withdrew from my family as much as possible, taking on additional jobs to support myself and seldom returning home. On the rare occasions I did visit, Michael would mockingly comment on my perceived aloofness, and our parents often echoed his sentiments, suggesting I had grown cold. Despite these challenges, I graduated with honours and secured a promising digital marketing manager. At my new job, I met William, who soon became my steadfast supporter. Over the past 5 years, he has shown immense understanding of my strained family relations. His family welcomed me with open arms, providing a stark contrast to my own experiences and showing me what a healthy family environment looks like. 10 months ago, William proposed during a romantic weekend getaway, and I was ecstatic about our future together. However, the prospect of wedding planning revived my anxieties about dealing with my family. After careful consideration, I chose not to invite Michael or my parents to the wedding. I wanted our special day to be marked by love and positivity, not marred by the negativity that had long tainted my familial relationships. When my mother tearfully inquired last week about the absence of an invitation, I explained calmly but firmly that our fraught history made their presence at the wedding untenable for me. She accused me of being selfish and vindictive. My father, joining the call, expressed that I was breaking Michael's heart by excluding him from the day. Despite these accusations, I stood by my decision, seeking to protect the sanctity of our upcoming celebration. Despite the long gap in our communication, he assumed he would be my best man. This bold assumption shocked me, but I stood firm in my decision, which was not negotiable. Michael reacted explosively, bombarding me with hostile texts and accusations of jealousy and selfishness. It seemed he had altered our shared childhood memories, portraying himself as the wronged party. My parents even threatened to disinherit me if I did not invite my family to the wedding. This type of manipulation would have affected me deeply in the past, but I have since moved beyond depending on them. William, my supportive partner, understands the unhealthy dynamics of my family relationships. He has offered to handle communications with them to protect me from their pressure. Some friends have suggested inviting my family to maintain peace, stirring doubts in me about possibly regretting their absence at my wedding. However, remembering the past pains and letdowns confirms why I am making this tough choice. I shared my story on Reddit seeking advice and received a lot of supportive feedback, which helped me stay strong. I mentioned that after further discussions with William, I remained resolute about not inviting Michael and my parents. William proposed a face-to-face meeting might help everyone find closure. We met at a cafe with my family, my mother visibly upset and my father disapproving. Michael seemed unusually quiet. As the meeting began, my parents lamented about family loyalty and ingratitude. After they finished, I calmly recounted instances where they had hurt me, stressing that our relationship did not justify their presence at my wedding. To my surprise, Michael confessed to sabotaging my camera in college, driven by jealousy over my academic achievements. This revelation stunned everyone, especially our parents, who finally seemed to see the real family dynamics. Attempts by my mum to downplay the incident and my dad's offer to fund the wedding, if included, were both firmly rejected. Their offer was another manipulation tactic, which I declined, emphasising the importance of genuine support at our wedding. Michael's earlier remorse quickly turned into anger, as he accused me of feeling superior and warned of future regrets. At this point, William, who had been quietly supportive, intervened, suggesting it was time to leave, marking the end of a contentious but revealing conversation. As we prepared to leave the cafe, my mother, with tears in her eyes, grabbed my arm and asked if this meant I was cutting them out of my life permanently. I answered truthfully, telling her I was uncertain, but knew I needed space to heal and think everything through. In the days that followed that emotionally charged meeting, my phone was inundated with messages from various relatives. It became clear that Michael and my parents were sharing their own distorted version of the events. They were telling everyone that I was experiencing a mental breakdown and attempting to dismantle the family unit. My aunt even called, urging me to delay the wedding until I could come to my senses. The relentless flow of messages and calls was emotionally exhausting, causing me to occasionally doubt my decision. But then I'd recall the long history of pain and neglect, reaffirming my confidence that I was making the right choice for myself. William, ever supportive, proposed a weekend getaway to escape the family drama and reconnect with each other. We drove to a charming beach town a few hours away where we enjoyed long walks on the beach, sampled local cuisine, and simply relished each other's company, free from the dark cloud of family troubles. One evening, as we watched the sunset, William expressed his pride in how I stood up for myself. He reminded me that we were building our own family now, founded on mutual respect and love. That short vacation reinforced my resolution and helped me focus on the promising future we were planning together. We even started discussing relocating to a new city after our wedding for a fresh beginning, away from the toxic influence of my family. Upon returning home, I made the tough decision to block my family on my phone and social media. It felt drastic, but I knew I had to protect my mental well-being. As the wedding approached, we took additional practical steps to ensure the day would proceed without interruptions. We hired security for the venue to handle any potential surprise appearances, and password protected our vendor accounts to prevent any unauthorized changes to our plans. These measures were regrettable but necessary to keep the focus on our celebration. As the wedding day neared, I tried to concentrate on the joy of marrying William and the support of friends who had become like family. There was still a hint of sadness about the rift with my biological family, but I was learning to accept that I couldn't change them or compel them to treat me respectfully. All I could do was move forward and build the life and family I deserved. I was grateful for the overwhelming support from friends and online well-wishers who understood my situation after years of manipulation by my family. About a month has passed since then, and there have been both positive and challenging developments. William and I have finalised most details of our wedding, opting for a smaller, more intimate celebration with close friends and William's family. We selected a beautiful garden venue, and the florist created stunning arrangements featuring my favourite flowers. We also crafted a menu that reflects both our tastes. Practicing our first dance has been a delightful way to unwind, filled with laughter and the occasional stepped on toe. However, there has been some troubling news. Despite my explicit wishes, my family continued their attempts to interfere with our wedding plans. Last week, my mother unexpectedly appeared at my workplace. I was in a meeting when a colleague interrupted to tell me there was a distressed woman in the lobby demanding to see me. When I approached, I found my mother in tears, causing a scene, and pleading for me to reconsider her involvement in the wedding, claiming she had already made significant preparations on her own. As we stood up to leave the cafe, my mother, tear-streaked, green and desperate, clutched my arm. She pleaded with me, unable to bear the thought of missing her daughter's wedding. She had brought along photo albums from my childhood, hoping that these memories might sway my decision. I felt a mix of mortification and anger that she would ambush me at my workplace like this. I told her firmly to leave and warned her that if she tried anything similar again, I would not hesitate to call security. She left in tears, and I was left shaken and embarrassed, though my boss was understanding. A few days later, I received an unexpected email from Michael. It was a stark contrast to his previous angry texts. In the email, Michael reflected on his behaviour over the years. He admitted he had been a terrible brother and expressed a desire to make amends. He shared how he felt overshadowed by my successes and reacted by lashing out. Michael even offered to reimburse me for the camera he had broken years ago. having researched its current market value. While part of me appreciated his attempt at reconciliation and the gesture of paying for the camera, it felt like too little, too late. Years of accumulated hurt and resentment couldn't be erased by a single email, no matter how sincere. I replied, thanking him for his apology, but reiterating my need for space and affirming that my decision about the wedding remained unchanged. However, the situation escalated when I learned that Michael had obtained the contact information for our wedding venue. The venue coordinator called me, puzzled after someone claiming to be William tried to add 4 names to the guest list. Thankfully, due to our precautions, she verified with me first. I was shocked by Michael's audacity. It seemed like a significant breach of my boundaries and cast doubt on the sincerity of his apology. This incident confirmed my decision to exclude them from the wedding was the right one. William was livid when I told him about the deception. He suggested we consider a restraining order, fearing further attempts to disrupt our wedding. Although the thought of taking legal action against my own family felt drastic, the safety and sanctity of our wedding day were paramount. On a brighter note, William's family has been wonderfully supportive. His parents invited us over for dinner, and during a heartfelt conversation, his mum expressed how she already viewed me as a daughter and commended me for my courage in standing up for myself. It was incredibly affirming to feel so embraced and valued, especially given the stark contrast with my own family's behaviour. As the wedding approached, William and I engaged in premarital counselling, which has been invaluable for processing our experiences and strengthening our bond. We discussed our future and our desire to forge a different path from the familial patterns I grew up with. We also chose to celebrate our upcoming marriage in a unique way, opting for a private cooking class for our bachelor and bachelorette parties instead of traditional larger celebrations. It was refreshing to establish new traditions that felt personal and meaningful. Despite occasional pangs of guilt and sadness and fleeting daydreams of reconciliation, like my father walking me down the aisle or dancing with my mother at the reception, I remained firm in my resolve. The ongoing support from William, his family, and our friends reinforced that I was making the right choices for my future. As we neared the wedding, I focused on the excitement of marrying William and starting our new life together, filled with genuine love and support. The drama with my family continued to loom in the background, but I felt increasingly confident in the path we were choosing. After a whirlwind period filled with ups and downs, William and I are about to embark on a peaceful honeymoon at a quaint beach resort nearby. I'm eager for some serene time together following the whirlwind of wedding preparations and the big day itself. I'm truly grateful for the ongoing support and advice from everyone. It's been a transformative journey, and I'm excited to start this new chapter of my life with William. The wedding day, despite the prior turmoil, turned out to be absolutely perfect. We held our ceremony outdoors, surrounded by close friends and William's warm, loving family. The weather cooperated beautifully, the food was exceptional, and the dance floor was bustling all night. One particularly heartfelt moment was during the reception when William's sister delivered a speech. She expressed her happiness about gaining a sister in me, which moved me to tears, and underscored how fortunate I am to be the part of such a supportive family. As for my own family, they made one final attempt to be the part of the day. About an hour before the ceremony, my parents and Michael unexpectedly showed up at the venue, all dressed up and claiming they came to support me. I was in the middle of getting my hair done when a bridesmaid came to tell me, visibly upset. For a moment, I was overwhelmed with anger and sadness. But then, catching my reflection in the mirror in my wedding dress, I was reminded not to let their actions spoil this beautiful day. Thankfully, the security team we had wisely hired managed the situation with professionalism. They escorted my family away discreetly, ensuring the day proceeded smoothly without any further disturbances. The ceremony itself was magical. As I walked down the aisle toward William, seeing his joyous reaction, I felt an overwhelming sense of certainty about my decisions. We exchanged vows we had written ourselves, and there wasn't a dry eye to be seen. William's parents looked on with pride, and I've never felt more embraced and loved. The reception was a vibrant celebration where we danced, laughed, and created memories to cherish forever. William even surprised me with a song he had composed, performed alongside his college band. It was a highlight of the day, a moment of sheer happiness I'll always hold dear. In the weeks following the wedding, I have received various messages from extended family members. Most have been supportive, stating they understood my decision after seeing the joy on my wedding day. A few expressed regret that my immediate family wasn't there, but respected that it was my choice. Michael sent another email, this time apologising for his attempt to disrupt the wedding. He admitted that being turned away by security made him realise the seriousness of my need for boundaries. He mentioned starting therapy, which I hope is a genuine step for him toward betterment. My parents haven't reached out since the wedding, though my aunt says they are heartbroken, but are trying to respect my wishes for space. While part of me feels guilty, a larger part of me feels a sense of relief that this chapter is finally closed. Tomorrow, William and I leave for a 3-week honeymoon in Greece, something we've eagerly anticipated for months. We're both looking forward to unwinding, exploring, and beginning our married life together away from any familial drama. Reflecting on everything, I am proud of myself for standing firm against the pressures and emotional manipulations. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my mental well-being and the health of my relationship with William. I'm optimistic about the future and eager to embrace this new chapter of my life. Growing up, I always felt overshadowed by my sister Ellie, who seemed to be the golden child in our family. My parents' evident favouritism left me feeling neglected, as I often found myself clad in Ellie's hand-me-downs and playing with her old toys. New items were a rarity, reserved primarily for her. Every Christmas, while Ellie received multiple gifts, I would get only a single new outfit, partly to keep up appearances in front of relatives. Our parents' partiality extended to daily life as well. For instance, meals were catered to Ellie's preferences. Any objections from me were quickly dismissed, and I remember being punished for simply expressing discontent with these arrangements. This treatment fostered a deep-seated resentment within me, not only towards my sister, but also towards our parents. The one bright spot in my life was my grandfather, who provided the unconditional love and attention I craved. He recognised the unfairness I experienced at home, and often invited me to stay with him at his farm. These visits were my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself and enjoy the simple pleasures of childhood, free from the shadow of my sister. Unfortunately, this refuge was temporary. When my grandfather passed away, he left behind a will, which included a specific inheritance meant for me. $110,000 designated for my college education. However, when the time came for me to access these funds for college applications, my parents dodged the topic. Their evasion escalated to outright refusal when I confronted them directly about the money. Feeling betrayed, I took legal action against my parents to claim my inheritance. The lawsuit strained our already fragile relationship to the breaking point, and I was ultimately forced to leave home. Despite these challenges, the ordeal brought to light the truth about my family's dynamics, serving as a harsh but necessary revelation. This period of my life, marked by struggle and enlightenment, has been incredibly tough. Yet, through it all, I've gained a clearer understanding of my value and the determination to pursue my own path, independent of the familial ties that once defined and confined me. I was in complete shock when I discovered that the money intended for my college education had been given to my sister to start her business. What the heck? I thought. That money was specifically set aside for my studies. When I confronted my parents, they casually mentioned that I could delay college for a year since they thought I was too young. This made no sense to me because my peers, who are the same age as I am, were already securing college admissions. When I pushed back, my parents pleaded with me to be patient and give them a year to gather the funds for my tuition. I couldn't help but wonder why my sister couldn't wait a year to start her business instead. Time was not something I was willing to waste. I was adamant about understanding my options to recover my money. A few months later, things had escalated. Despite my protests, my parents insisted I wait another year. They labelled me as mean and selfish when I continued to demand the money. Worse still, my sister Ellie began a smear campaign against me, telling everyone I was jealous of her business. When I threatened to expose that their actions were against Grandpa's will, my mum's response was fierce. She demanded that I pay them rent and cover my own expenses, claiming that after supporting me for 16 years, we were even. I was outraged. They still financially supported my 26-year-old sister, who was divorced with a child, while they scrutinised every expense on me. It was clear they favoured her despite her continuous disappointments, whereas my academic achievements were always overlooked. The story became even more complicated with my sister's background. She had become pregnant unexpectedly, and under pressure from our conservative Christian mum, married her boyfriend, who never wanted the responsibility. Eventually, he left, and my parents had to step in to help Ellie and her child. Upon Grandpa's death, when I returned home, it was evident that my mum was the one raising the child, as Ellie was often out, supposedly looking for a job, which wasn't entirely true. Despite all of these issues, my parents had supported her financially to start her business, using the money that was meant for me without even consulting me. Frustrated and desperate, I warned my parents I would sue them for violating Grandpa's will. The gravity of my threat was clear. I was no longer the naive child they could manipulate. My mum, in a fit of defiance, even listed out my life expenses in an attempt to show me how much I supposedly owed them. After an intense confrontation, I left home and went to my uncle's place, where I used to live with Grandpa. I found Grandpa's diary and took down his lawyer's contact details. Calling the lawyer seemed like my next best step to resolve this overwhelming situation and reclaim what was rightfully mine. After explaining the situation to the lawyer, he confirmed that I was indeed entitled to the $110,000 my grandfather had left for me. He said it was his duty to ensure that the will was executed correctly and promised to send an official notice to my parents. If they failed to comply, I could legally sue them. This news was a relief, but it also made me anxious about how my parents would react when they received the notice. I worried about the potential backlash. A few days later, I prepared for the worst. I had talked to a friend about possibly sharing her condo, and I had secured a part-time job at a bakery. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to cover some basics, and I could take home leftover food, which helped. Anticipating trouble, I packed my things in advance. As expected, when the notice arrived, my mum exploded. She threw me out, hurling insults and my belongings after me. She compared me to a treacherous snake, accusing me of biting the hand that fed me. In that heated moment, I shouted back that they had forced my hand, as they were jeopardizing both my future and my education with their selfishness. The lawyer had given my parents a month to respond to the notice, but they seemed to dismiss it. My sister Ellie even called to berate me, saying our parents wouldn't pay and that I couldn't afford to sue them. I kept my plans close to my chest and ended the call when I couldn't bear her accusations anymore. I informed my lawyer about her call, and he reassured me that we could proceed with legal action if my parents didn't respond soon. The legal notice didn't make my parents budge. I had hoped to resolve things amicably, but when I visited to discuss the matter, they were hostile. My mum went as far as to destroy some personal items I had left behind. Realising that a peaceful resolution was impossible, I instructed my lawyer to press charges. When the court summons arrived, my parents panicked. My father reached out, suggesting we could settle this without going to court, but their previous aggressiveness left me sceptical. At the court hearing, the reality of their financial situation came to light. My father showed his bank statements, claiming he couldn't pay the full amount immediately. Instead, he offered to pay $29,000 and $10 monthly. However, this arrangement wouldn't cover my immediate college expenses. The judge then ordered that my father must cover my tuition and basic living expenses up to a minimum total of $110,000. If my total expenses fell short of that, he would need to pay the difference. While I was uneasy about still being financially dependent on him, I had little choice. With visible remorse, my dad promised to comply without causing further trouble. I agreed, but with a clear warning that any future issues would lead me to take further legal action, possibly seeking damages for the emotional distress they caused. This situation left me disheartened, but determined to rebuild my life independently, knowing that the law was on my side if needed. Ellie has been spreading rumours that my actions have caused hypertension for our parents, and brought shame to the family by taking legal steps to claim what was rightfully mine. Ironically, her own scandalous behaviour seemed to have passed without much judgment, but my seeking justice was viewed as disgraceful. Frankly, I'm over worrying about their opinions. They've labelled me the black sheep, and now I'm quite content with that role. I've been busy transitioning into my new life at college. I graduated from high school with top grades and sent out invitations to my college convocation, half expecting my parents to ignore them. To my surprise, my dad actually showed up and, for the first time, expressed pride in me. It's taken 17 years and a court case for him to see me as his daughter, deserving of love and support. But now, I've moved past needing their approval. I quit my job at the bakery and moved into my college dorm. The funds from Dad, as mandated by the court, cover my tuition, accommodation, and basic living expenses. Beyond that, I am financially independent, working part-time near campus, and tutoring classmates in math to earn extra money. Some of you have asked about my relationship with Dad during all the previous conflicts. Honestly, Dad was largely absent, siding with Mum and turning a blind eye to my struggles. He never questioned her decisions, even when they negatively affected me, such as making me wear my sister's hand-me-downs to save money. I don't have much insight into how Dad reacted to Ellie's unexpected pregnancy and hurried marriage, as I was living with Grandpa at that time and quite detached from the household drama. As for my current situation, I couldn't be happier. I'm thriving in college, living the dream I fought hard to achieve. My relationship with Dad has improved post-lawsuit, although Mum and Ellie continue to badmouth me. They've got their own problems now, though. Ellie's poor decisions caught up with her when the police shut down her illegal gambling operation, which she had disguised as a gaming zone. All her equipment was seized, and the money she had taken to start this venture, money that was part of my inheritance, was lost. My parents had to use whatever was left to bail her out, leaving her with nothing. In a dramatic turn of events, after the gambling fiasco, Dad finally reached his limit and threw Ellie out of the house. Mum tried to advocate for her, but faced with a choice between supporting his wayward daughter or maintaining his marriage, she chose Dad. Ellie has since been trying to use her child to manipulate Dad, but it seems he's not falling for it anymore. She's now living with a friend, and who knows how long that will last. She hasn't reached out to me for help, and after everything, I'd prefer she didn't. I have no interest in rekindling a relationship with someone who, along with my mum, made my life incredibly difficult. Reflecting on everything, from the struggles after losing Grandpa to fighting my parents in court, it's been a tough journey. Reading my initial posts about these challenges makes me emotional. I've come so far from the helpless situation I was in. Now, I stand strong, independent, and validated in my actions. The support and guidance from my lawyer and this community have been invaluable in navigating this turbulent chapter of my life. I was engulfed by so much uncertainty about my future back then, with nothing but darkness and a feeling of helplessness surrounding me. I still deeply miss my grandpa. He truly is my guardian angel, and I know he's looking down on me, blessing me as I navigate through college life. At 39 years old, I find myself reflecting on the past with a mix of disbelief and regret. My ex-wife, also 39, and I first crossed paths in our mid-10s. We were friends initially and eventually decided to date. After about a year, which in the grand scheme isn't long, but felt significant at the time, she brought up marriage. I hesitated at first, wanting to wait a bit longer, but within a few months, I was ready. I proposed, she accepted, and we began planning our life together. This was when I should have noticed the warning signs. My fiancé dreamed of a lavish wedding. While I understood the appeal, the practical side of me couldn't justify spending a small fortune on just one day. After some discussion, I convinced her to settle for a small, intimate ceremony. She agreed, albeit reluctantly, and I believe that decision planted seeds of resentment that lingered subtly over the years. I've never been the quintessential romantic guy, but I always made an effort to keep our relationship alive with small, thoughtful gestures. Despite this, as the years rolled by, I sensed her growing dissatisfaction. We didn't have children, so there wasn't that added pressure, but something was amiss. Fast forward to our 29s, nearly 3 decades into our marriage, and things had grown stale. In an attempt to rekindle our romance, I planned a special night out, even enlisting my sister's help to boost the romantic vibe, admitting romance wasn't my forte. Unfortunately, my wife didn't come home that night. She claimed she stayed at a friend's house after drinking, deeming it safer than driving. I believed her. The next attempt at romance was a pleasant dinner, but when I tried to be intimate, she brushed me off, claiming exhaustion. This pattern continued, and I began to suspect her excuses were more than just tiredness. When I finally confronted her, expecting denials, she shockingly admitted to cheating with a man who was a family friend. He was everything I wasn't, she said, charismatic, overtly romantic, the very traits I struggled to exhibit. That confession was the end of our marriage. We proceeded with a relatively amicable divorce, agreeing to split everything equally. The house was sold, and we parted ways with our respective shares. What I thought would be a clean break turned messy when she, now drowning in debt from trying to live out the lavish lifestyle she always wanted with her new romantic partner, reached out to me for financial help. The irony was not lost on me. She cheated because I couldn't give her the dream wedding or be the storybook romantic she desired. Yet now, she was broke, her dreams shattered, asking for my help after the grandeur she sought led her to financial ruin. Reflecting on all this, it's clear that while our paths have diverged, the lessons learned from those tumultuous times continue to shape my perspectives on relationships and personal integrity. After the divorce, I used my share of the money from our joint account to buy a condo. I managed to save a decent amount as a nest egg, something for a rainy day. The sale of our house added to this fund, securing my financial stability. My ex, however, took a different path. She used her share to purchase a larger house than the one we had shared, and even planned an extravagant wedding, the kind she had always wanted but never got with me. I couldn't help but look at the wedding photos on Facebook. The lavish affair must have cost a fortune. As time passed, I chose to focus on rebuilding my life, spending time with friends and family, and generally moving on from the past. My ex seemed happily absorbed in her new life with her new husband. Or so I thought. I later found out that within a year of their marriage, they were buried in debt. She had blown through the divorce settlement on the grand house and the opulent wedding, leaving little for anything else. Her job did bring in a decent income, but she was the primary earner in her new household, as her new partner didn't contribute much financially. Eventually, she reached out to me, desperate for money. She tried to evoke nostalgia for our past relationship, but I was not swayed. Her financial imprudence was not my burden to bear. I firmly told her I wouldn't help and hung up. That night, she bombarded me with calls and left several angry voicemails. I played them to my friends, and we all laughed at the absurdity of her demands. It was clear she had no shame, or she was truly desperate. I wondered if she ever really thought I would bail her out. Even if she had asked me months earlier, my answer would have been the same. There was no way I was going to support her after she had not only cheated, but also squandered her financial settlement on frivolous things. That night, I blocked her number, determined to close this chapter of my life. She had made her choice to pursue a new life with someone else. And if she had planned better, she might still have had her finances in order. Most of my family and friends were relieved to see her go. I sometimes wonder if they ever genuinely liked her or just tolerated her for my sake. Regardless, it doesn't matter anymore. My ex is firmly in the past, and that's where she's going to stay.